It's time for a Friday read. I haven't done one of these in a couple of weeks, so I thought I would do one today. And I'm going to be honest, I don't actually remember what I read in the past week and what I read in the couple of weeks before that, so I pulled out three books that I know I've read recently for sure. One of them I'm still working on. The one that I'm working on right now and that I intend to finish tonight is The Woman Destroyed by Simone de Beauvoir. And this includes three pieces of short fiction, all about women. I've made it through the first two. The first one involves a older woman, and it's interesting because in many passages we get the sense that we're not observing a scene through a narrator, as often happens with novels. We are in fact observing the thoughts of a character who is observing a scene, and everything is happening very much in her head. And in the first few pages we even get the sense that time has stopped. She's looking at her watch and she feels as though time has stopped. The hands on the watch haven't moved, and the writing, her train of thought mirrors that, because we don't in fact seem to move through time at all. We're very much in this one scene with her and her thoughts. And I thought it was a very well done piece of short fiction. I read the second one as well, didn't like it quite as much, but still quite good. We have, once again, an older woman, and she is kind of stuck alone in her room, and she's recalling the death of her daughter, how she's cut off from her son, the relationship that she's had with a couple of men in her life, her husbands, and she's just really in despair because she is now completely alone. She wants a man in her life again, but in a way she also understands that probably won't happen, since she's gotten old, since she's in this place alone as it is. And she's very much conflicted because you get the sense that she loves her children, that she's sad that her daughter died, that she's cut off from her son. But then she makes comments about children not being that important anyway, kind of who needs children? I don't need children. And then the third story I haven't actually gotten to yet. But before I started in on that, and I'm kind of off center here a bit. There we go, now I'm centered. But before I started in on that, I finished reading Effie Briest by Fontaine. And the foreword in this Penguin Classic compares it to Madame Bovary, which I haven't actually read, but from what I've heard about Madame Bovary and having read this one now, I can see why there would be certain similarities. This is a 19th century German novel, and Miriam actually recommended it to me, and I really did love it. It's something that I would read again, and I'm planning to read Madame Bovary soon just so I can make the comparisons myself. But it's basically about a young woman. She is 16 when she marries a man who is almost 40 years old. It's kind of weird, I mean the time period, but it's still weird, because her mother was actually a little bit in love with this man in her youth, but she didn't marry him because he didn't have the position and the fortune. She married someone with more money, with a better position. But now that this guy has kind of climbed up the social ladder, he's a governor, she's excited because her daughter gets to marry the guy that she chose not to marry. So it's kind of odd in that sense. But so you have the older man, the young wife. The husband is gone a lot. She is left alone kind of in this rural area, in this house where some creepy things are going on, and there is a man who comes to call. So you can kind of guess what happens next. after I finished that, as I said, I moved on to the Simone de Beauvoir. But before those, I read The Age of Reason by Sartre. I actually own this in another copy, but I saw this Blue Penguin Classic at the Chapters and just had to buy it. It was $12.99. This is actually the first time that I've seen the colorful penguins in Canada, so I was super excited, and I actually, behind me, I bought a couple more. I've got, you can see Kafka's Metamorphosis on the top there, and Dostoevsky's The Gambler and Nasty Business. So I will be reading those in the near future, but that's not what's on the agenda for this weekend. And for the coming week or two, I listened to an audiobook of a lecture on Audible, and I'm forgetting exactly who the professor was, but she was a literature professor, and she was talking about Balzac. I've read a little bit of Balzac. Anyway, she talked about Balzac and Flaubert and Proust and Camus. I've read a bit of Camus. I've read a bit of Balzac. I have not read Flaubert or Proust. And so I went to the library this evening after work. Hit up that French literature section. It's always difficult looking for the French authors because 3/4 of it, possibly more, is of course in French. Being that I'm in Ottawa, which is a bilingual city, very, very close to the Quebec border. So you've got a lot of people wanting to read those French works in the original French, and so you have to dig through and find the English if you're not a francophone or if you're not bilingual, as I am. I am an anglophone, and I hope to become bilingual in the future, but for now I am stuck with the works in translation. So this happened. That's my books, and that's also my weightlifting exercise for the day. I carried that across campus, on the bus, home on my lap, and of course down the 5-minute walk. And I actually ended up with some Andre Gide, because I came across, as I was looking on the shelf near him, I was actually looking for Gustave Flaubert for Madame Bovary, but I came across Andre Gide as I was looking, and I found his journals, which I had heard about maybe about a year ago, 9 months ago, and I thought, oh, I'd like to read those someday. I didn't look into it more, and then I saw them, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just get one volume, but the problem is, if I liked the volume, it's a small volume, and so I thought, well, maybe I'll get 2, because I don't go to the library very often, because it's out of my way. So I grabbed 2, and then I thought, well, why not 3? And then if I'm getting 3, I may as well get all 4 they had on the shelf there. I actually started on the first volume already, and I quite like it. It's an easy translation to get into. And this actually has a foreword from 1947, an introduction rather, by Justin O'Brien, and I'm just looking for the translator here. Should be fairly obvious. Also translated by Justin O'Brien, which does make sense, and these were printed in London. Secker and Warburg. That's not a publisher I'm familiar with, but these should be interesting and should take up quite a lot of my time. Just set them on the floor there. Get my water bottle out of the way. This has an excellent seal, which is why I trust it in the bag with the books. And so I was thinking in the way of Proust, and I'm like, okay, what do they have in English? And they had In Search of Lost Time, the series in the English and in relatively recent additions to Modern Library Classics. And so I, of course, started with volume 1, so I got Swan's Way. I would have grabbed the entire set if I hadn't been thinking about carrying things. I already had all the journals of Andre Gide, so that was just out. But I thought, you know, this isn't all that long either, and if I read through this and really like it, I don't want to have to rush back to the library right away to begin the second volume, because I might not have time. So I got volume 2 within a budding grove as well. I seem to recall that there's some sort of group on Goodreads that's been doing a buddy read of these, a read along of some sort. I'm not going to try to take part in any read-alongs, I'm just going to go for it. With my recent buddy read for Lolita, I've discovered once again why I don't usually do buddy reads. I am quite a fast reader. I like to inhale a book, I like to consume it all at once, and even when I do slow down, I did quite enjoy slowing down to read Lolita, doing 3 chapters a day. Other people didn't necessarily have the same pace as I did, so I kept up with my 3 chapters a day, and then the conversation went quiet, and people hadn't read in a few days, and so I just read the last half straight out, and then I had Janelle and Valentia saying, is this conversation dead? And I had to admit that I had gone ahead and finished the book, and yeah, I'm just not very good at buddy reads. So I've got those. And then I've got Madame Bovary, which was one of the books I went in looking for. And I could choose from a number of editions and a number of translators, and I really don't know anything about the translators for Flaubert, so I don't know who's good, who isn't. I ended up going with a Norton Critical Edition, 2nd edition, translated by Eleanor Marks Aveling and Paul de Man, on the assumption that if it was a Norton Critical Edition, it would probably be a decent translation, and I do get the extra notes in here. Fashionable lady there. As opposed to the other editions that were on the shelf that included publishers and translators that I'd never heard of. I mean, I haven't heard of these translators either, but at least I recognize the fact that it's a Norton Critical Edition. So hopefully I'm not too far off the mark with this one, and I didn't choose wrong. And then I decided, why not some Balzac? So I've got Cousin Betty. This I haven't read before. When I read Balzac the last time through, I ended up reading 2 volumes. One was like a provincial in Paris or something. They were 2 back-to-back volumes that I'd found by chance at a secondhand bookstore, and they were pretty old, hardbound, yellowed pages, crackling pages, no publication date, that sort of thing. And I don't actually have them here in Ottawa, so I can't check on the titles, but I do know that I haven't gotten to Cousin Betty, and this is supposedly one of his best works, or at least one of the most well-known works. Yes, so that is my library haul, and my Friday reads, what I'm up to. These books are going to keep me busy for a couple of weeks, I would guess. In regards to The Age of Reason by Sartre, I had contemplated doing a review for that book. The problem is, I came away from it with so many fragmented thoughts, feeling like I didn't fully grasp what he was doing with the ending. I'm still kind of dwelling on the ending and thinking about the ending. And so if I do end up doing a review of Age of Reason, it'll be at some point in the future once I've reread that. What I'll probably do is read volumes 2 and 3 in that kind of series or trilogy, and then return to The Age of Reason and possibly do a review of that.